You know what's quietly exhausting? Not physical work, not long hours, not even stress in the way we usually imagine it. It's thinking without pause. Some of the most intelligent, emotionally aware people you'll ever meet are also the most mentally drained, not because they're doing too much, but because their mind never truly stops. They replay conversations long after they've ended. They analyze tone, wording, expressions. They imagine outcomes that haven't happened and might never happen. And at 2 a.m., when the world is finally quiet, their mind isn't. It's louder than ever, constantly asking, what if? Here's the paradox. The very trait that makes someone thoughtful, perceptive, and empathetic is often the same trait to exhaust them. So what's actually happening here? Why do some people get stuck in these loops of thinking while others seem able to just let things go? In psychology, this pattern has a name: maladaptive rumination. It's the tendency for the mind to return to the same thoughts over and over again, especially around uncertainty, past events, or social interactions. But here's the important part. People who overthink aren't doing it because they're weak. They're not broken. They're not even necessarily anxious by default. In many cases, they're mentally sharp. Their brains are highly skilled at pattern recognition. They notice details others miss. They connect dots faster. They process deeply. The issue isn't that they think. It's that their mind doesn't know when to stop. Neurologically, a lot of this comes down to two systems in the brain. First, the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for planning, analyzing, and reflecting. In overthinkers, this region tends to stay highly active, even when there's nothing urgent to solve. Second, something called the default mode network. This is like your brain's background engine. It runs when you're not focused on the outside world. And in people who think too much, this system doesn't go quiet. It keeps generating internal dialogue, replaying, predicting, questioning. The result? A mind that's always on, always processing, always preparing, even when rest is what it needs most. But this pattern rarely begins in adulthood. For many people, overthinking is learned early. Imagine growing up in an environment where things felt unpredictable, where moods changed suddenly, where mistakes had big consequences, where you had to read between the lines to stay safe. In that kind of environment, the brain adapts. It learns, think ahead, analyze everything, anticipate what might go wrong. Because if you can predict it, maybe you can protect yourself. So overthinking, in that sense, isn't a flaw. It's a strategy. A very intelligent nervous system doing exactly what it was trained to do. Now here's where it gets more nuanced. Not all overthinking is the same. Psychologists generally divide it into two types. The first is reflective rumination. This is the healthier version. It's when someone turns inward to understand themselves better, to process emotions, to make sense of experiences. When balanced, this kind of thinking leads to insight, growth, emotional intelligence. But then there's the second type, brooding rumination. This is where things start to spiral. Instead of understanding, the mind gets stuck. It replays problems without resolving them. It fixates on what went wrong. It creates loops without exits. And this is where the cost shows up. Sleep gets disrupted. Decisions become harder. Social interactions feel heavier. A simple conversation can turn into hours of analysis. What did they mean by that? Did I say something wrong? Should I have responded differently? The tricky part? The shift between these two types is almost invisible. You start by reflecting, and before you realize it, you're spiraling. Because thinking feels productive. Your brain is active, engaged, working. But in reality, it's not solving anything. It's just looping. Psychologists call this the illusion of mental progress. It feels like you're getting somewhere, but you're standing still. And there's a reason this loop is so hard to break. Dopamine. Every time your brain engages in problem solving, even imagined problem solving, it releases small amounts of dopamine. So when you're analyzing, replaying, constructing scenarios, your brain is being rewarded. Not for solving the problem, but for thinking about it. That's why telling someone to just stop thinking doesn't work, because neurologically, their brain has an incentive to keep going. So what does all of this say about people who think too much? Interestingly, something quite positive. Research shows that people who ruminate more often score higher in cognitive empathy. That means they're better at understanding how others think and feel. They pick up on subtle cues. They sense emotional shifts. They notice what isn't said. They're deeply perceptive. The same system that creates mental exhaustion also creates emotional depth. But there's a trade-off, because perception without resolution is draining. You notice everything. You feel everything. You consider every possibility. But clarity? That becomes harder to reach. And here's the truth that psychology keeps coming back to. Not every problem can be solved by thinking. Some things have to be felt, or decided, or simply released. That's why many therapeutic approaches don't focus on stopping thoughts. They focus on changing your relationship with them. One powerful method comes from acceptance and commitment therapy. It introduces a concept called cognitive defusion. Instead of getting pulled into every thought, you learn to observe it, to create distance. So instead of, "This situation is dangerous, I need to fix it," it becomes, "My brain is generating a concern right now." It's a small shift in language, but a powerful shift in experience, because one pulls you deeper into the loop, and the other gives you space. And maybe that's the real goal. Not to silence the mind completely, but to teach it, gently, that it doesn't have to stay on high alert anymore. Because overthinking isn't a personality flaw. It's not weakness. It's a mind that learned to stay vigilant in a world that once felt uncertain. And like all learned patterns, it can be softened. Not erased overnight, but understood. And that understanding is where change begins. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is not think more, but finally allow yourself to rest. And if this made you see your own mind a little differently, make sure you're subscribed, because the next video goes even deeper into human behavior. We're breaking down everyday habits that reveal an extremely low IQ, backed by psychology. Some of these habits are surprisingly common, and once you notice them, you won't be able to unsee them. So hit subscribe, and I'll see you